G'day and welcome to this week's video. This week we're going to have a look at self-managed superannuation funds, and in particular a report that was released in June 2018 that looked at obviously improving the quality of advice and also looking at the members' experience. And what ASIC did was they reviewed 250 files where advice was provided, where a recommendation was given to set up a self-managed superannuation fund. And it was around 135 different licensees, advice providers, that were called on to provide these files, and then they reviewed them all. Unfortunately, what they did find, there was a huge proportion of files that really had compliance issues. So from a financial advisor's point of view that deals in self-managed super funds quite a lot, I thought I really need to understand what's happening here, and I also think this is beneficial for consumers to understand what worries the regulator that is looking at the advice that's given to Australians. So let's kick on in and have a bit of a look at what they found, and that is, of the 250 files, 91% of those files were sort of deemed not to demonstrate the compliance with obviously the law, and that the advice must be appropriate. And the impact of that advice, they found that 26 files or 10%, the client risked being significantly worse off because of the advice. Nearly 50 files or nearly 20%, there was an increased risk of suffering financial detriment in the future, and a further 155 files found that the advice provider didn't demonstrate the compliance of best interest, and that's where the advisor by law needs to put the client first. So pretty damning sort of figures there, and need to understand what's happening and where are these concerns. So some of the issues that I found in reading this document, which I encourage everyone to go and have a look at, is 2/3 of these files. These are 250 files, and the time frame was only from July 2016 to essentially now, so a bit under 2 years. So it's all very recent. But 2/3 of these self-managed super funds were set up with account balances of less than $350,000. Now, if people are doing a lot of stuff themselves and they're sitting around $200,000 to $400,000, they're doing a lot of work themselves, they can be quite efficient, but from a cost point of view, they're not very efficient the smaller a super fund gets. So that was a concern. They weren't covering any advice when it came to the insurance side of things, and on top of that, they weren't considering the funds that the clients were in before they rolled them over to the self-managed superannuation fund. So what often we see is there's a lot of insurance in industry funds where they have default insurance, and when you roll that fund over from the retail or industry fund into the self-managed super fund, all that insurance is immediately cancelled, so you lose your insurance. And that's something I've seen locally here. Set up a self-managed super fund and roll everything over, and all the insurance is gone, regardless of the amount of debt or dependence that they've got. So that's a real issue and really poor advice. They're also not qualifying the self-managed superannuation potential trustees. Is a self-managed super fund suitable? There's a lot more work with them. In some scenarios, there can be extra costs. So if it's extra costs and extra work, and if people are properly notified and educated about this, I'm sure they would, reconsider whether it's the way to go. And there's other important information that's just not being communicated, and that's whether obviously super fund trustees understand they don't have access to certain complaints resolution schemes or government compensation due to fraud or theft. Of course, the advantages and disadvantages of having a corporate versus individual trustees, and whether their existing super fund may be quite suitable for the job. And of course, down the bottom there, increased admin costs, and obviously the effort to run a fund, set up a fund, and potentially wind up a fund. So that's where they've got some concerns, but one of the larger concerns for them, in the way that I read the report, was property. And you can see here that one-stop property shops where people can go in and talk to the property developer, the marketer, and then go and talk to the financial advisor to provide the advice, who's then off to the solicitor and mortgage broker to make it all happen within the one-stop shop. So, and we can see here 61% of the advice that was recommended, or that the self-managed super fund people, the members intended to, was to invest into direct property. So for the most part, a lot of that will be new apartments that developers have built and are now desperate to sell. So that's going to bring up a whole range of issues, particularly at this peak cycle where we're going to see and are seeing property come off the boil. I've been talking about this for possibly 10 years and definitely on this channel, and obviously the risks of investing all your money plus a heap of debt, because there's a lot of debt involved with these recommendations to buy the property. So you've got no diversification, you've got a lot of debt, and it's illiquid, and difficult to sell to get your money back. So clients need to be really careful, and I think having a read of this report for retail investors as well as the professional industry, they should be having a look at it to see what worries ASIC, and then if it worries ASIC, it should definitely be worrying us. So thank you for listening. Really appreciate the time. Down below in the description, we've got lots of free resources there. There's 4 free online courses that some of them are perfect for young people to, with regards to co-contributions or understanding superannuation. But go down and check those out. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video and subscribe to the channel. That'll be awesome, and we'll catch you next week. See ya.